Most people think self-love is something you earn, something you unlock after healing, after achieving, after becoming someone better. But the truth is simpler and harder to accept. Self-love is not a finish line, it's a practice, a quiet one, daily, gentle, often unseen. It's not loud affirmations or grand declarations. It's forgiving yourself in the dark. It's choosing rest when the world wants you to push. It's standing in front of the mirror and seeing a human, not a project. In this episode, we're not chasing a version of love that demands perfection. We're returning to something deeper, gentle, grounded ways to love yourself, right now, without conditions. 12 reminders, 12 small revolutions, because self-love doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in moments, quiet moments, your moments. 1. Forgive yourself. What if the only thing standing between you and healing is your refusal to forgive yourself? We talk about growth, about progress, about transformation, but rarely do we talk about the heavy shadow we carry underneath it all, self-blame, that quiet voice that whispers, "You should have known better. You should have done more. You shouldn't have let that happen." And so we walk forward, dragging guilt like a chain, hoping success will erase the shame, hoping time will make us forget. But guilt doesn't dissolve with time. It dissolves with compassion. You don't heal by punishing your past self. You heal by finally sitting with them, that version of you who didn't know yet, who was trying to survive, who did the best they could with the tools they had. Forgiveness doesn't mean that what happened was okay. It means you're no longer willing to keep hurting yourself over it. The Stoics weren't soft, but they were clear. Epictetus said, "Every error must be corrected, not punished." And that's the key. Growth isn't fueled by shame. It's fueled by understanding. You can't beat yourself into peace. You arrive there by choosing kindness, especially toward the version of you who needed it most. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's responsibility. It's saying, "I acknowledge what I did. I acknowledge what I didn't know. I hold space for the lesson, and now I release the weapon." Because when you carry guilt long after the moment has passed, it stops being accountability and starts being self-abandonment. So how do you forgive yourself? You begin with honesty. You name what you're still holding on to, without judgment. You separate the action from your identity. You remind yourself that mistakes are part of being human, not a sign that you're unworthy of love. Then you breathe. You speak gently to yourself, like someone you care about. You say, "I see you. I know you meant well, and I choose to grow, not by carrying this forever, but by finally letting it go." And yes, this takes time. Some days you'll feel free. Other days, the shame will resurface. That's okay. Forgiveness is a practice, not a single moment. But every time you choose understanding over punishment, you rewrite the way you treat yourself. You begin to create a life that doesn't require you to suffer to prove you've changed. So ask yourself, what version of me still needs to hear, "I forgive you"? And what would shift in my life if I finally meant it? Let go of the shame. Keep the lesson. That's where real self-love begins. 2. Be mindful of what you truly want. When was the last time you asked yourself, "Is this what I really want, or what I've been told I should want?" We live in a world that moves fast, that praises ambition, constant achievement, and external success. And in the rush to figure it out, we often lose sight of our own voice. We chase titles that don't fulfill us, people who don't see us, routines that drain us, not because we're misguided, but because we've confused pressure with purpose. You scroll, you compare, you internalize other people's dreams. You watch someone else's lifestyle and begin to believe it's what you're supposed to build. You start working toward goals that never came from your own soul. And eventually, you arrive at success that doesn't feel like yours, and wonder why you still feel empty. That's what happens when you abandon your inner knowing. The Stoics urged us to turn inward, not in retreat, but in clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and what you want is shaped by what you allow your mind to absorb. If your thoughts are full of noise, your desires will be too. If your mind is quiet, your wants become honest, clear, personal. But this kind of clarity doesn't shout. It whispers. It comes in the pause between distractions, in the moment of stillness before the noise resumes. What you truly want often isn't loud. It doesn't scream for validation. It gently tugs at your awareness, waiting for you to listen. The problem is, most people never stop long enough to hear it. You can't know your true desires if you're always performing, if you're always pleasing, if your day is a series of reactions rather than reflections. Self-love, at its core, requires discernment. The courage to ask yourself not just what do I want, but why do I want it? Is this goal rooted in expansion or insecurity? Am I moving towards something authentic or away from something unresolved? To be mindful of what you truly want, you must be willing to challenge inherited desires, family expectations, cultural pressure, even your younger self's dreams, because not everything you once wanted still belongs to you. Growth means checking in with yourself, often without guilt, without shame. So how do you start? Begin by creating space for silence. 5 minutes in the morning before you touch your phone, a walk without music, a journal with no goal, and ask, what do I crave when no one's watching? What makes me feel alive? Not just proud. Then, observe your body. Your energy doesn't lie. You may say you want that job, that relationship, that path. But how does your body respond when you think of living that reality? Do you expand or contract? Do you feel lifted or caged? Your nervous system often knows the truth long before your mind catches up. You may realize that what you really want is rest, not a promotion, stillness, not another achievement, connection, not attention, or maybe it's something bigger than you've ever allowed yourself to imagine. Maybe what you want scares you because it feels too different, too radical, too you. But that's how you know it's real. When you start honoring those quiet truths, when you let go of should and follow soul, something shifts. Life stops feeling like performance and starts feeling like presence. And the beauty is, once you're clear on what you truly want, you no longer waste energy chasing what was never meant for you. You stop saying yes out of fear. You stop overcommitting just to feel worthy. You begin to live from alignment, and alignment is the foundation of every form of real self-love. So ask yourself, honestly and gently, what am I currently pursuing that no longer feels aligned with my truth? What have I ignored again and again that keeps trying to surface quietly? What would my life look like if I finally honored what I really want instead of what I think I should? Because self-love isn't just about taking care of yourself. It's about knowing yourself and living accordingly. 3. Act on what you need. How often do you betray yourself just to be accepted? You say yes when you're tired. You show up when you're depleted. You smile when your chest feels heavy. And while it may look like strength on the outside, inside, something is slowly breaking. Because every time you ignore what you need, you tell yourself that your peace is less important than someone else's comfort. We often confuse kindness with self-abandonment. We believe that being loved means being available, that being respected means always saying yes, that being a good person means putting everyone else first, even if it costs us our sanity. But here's the truth. Self-love begins when you act on your needs without guilt. And acting on your needs doesn't always look profound. Sometimes it looks like turning off your phone instead of answering every message. Sometimes it means canceling plans when your body is begging for rest. Sometimes it means walking away from a conversation that keeps reopening a wound you've tried to heal. The Stoics didn't frame it in terms of self-care, but they lived by its spirit. Seneca wrote, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have, and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have." That includes your energy, your attention, your time. These aren't infinite resources. They must be guarded, not from a place of fear, but from a place of honor, because acting on what you need doesn't make you selfish. It makes you self-respecting. And yet, many of us were never taught how to listen to ourselves. We were taught to achieve, to serve, to adapt. We internalized the idea that needing space was weakness, that asking for rest was laziness, that choosing ourselves would make us unlovable. So we overextend, overgive, overcommit, until we forget what our needs even feel like. But self-love means relearning that language, the body's signals, the mind's quiet cries, the emotions you suppress so that others won't feel uncomfortable. It starts with pausing, with asking, what do I need right now? Not what do they need, not what's expected, but what does my soul actually require? Maybe it's quiet, maybe it's sunlight, maybe it's water or music, or solitude. Maybe it's saying no. Maybe it's saying yes to yourself for the first time in a long time. And here's the most powerful part. When you start honoring your needs, the people who truly love you will adjust. They may not understand at first. They may push back. But the ones meant for you will learn to love you with boundaries, not just with access. And the ones who don't? They were only connected to the version of you that didn't yet love themselves enough to choose wisely. You're allowed to change, to rest, to ask for space. You're allowed to say, not today, not this, not anymore. That is not rejection of others. It is a return to self. It is the reclamation of your energy. And remember, acting on what you need isn't about perfection. It's about small, consistent choices. Drinking water when your head aches, logging off before burnout, saying no without explanation. Every one of those acts is a declaration. I matter. My well-being matters. My needs are valid. So ask yourself, where have I been ignoring my needs just to maintain peace? What is my body asking for? And am I brave enough to finally listen? Because self-love doesn't just sound beautiful, it feels like relief. And relief begins with one honest choice at a time. 4. Set boundaries without apology. When did saying no start feeling like something you had to explain? Most people aren't taught how to set boundaries. They're taught how to please. From a young age, you learn to keep the peace, to be polite, to not make it a big deal. You're rewarded for being flexible, for being quiet, for being the one who's always available. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to equate being good with being accessible. But here's the truth. Love that requires your silence is not love. Respect that costs you your peace is not respect. Boundaries are not a betrayal of others. They're an act of protection for yourself. And not just protection from people, but protection from patterns. Patterns of self-abandonment, patterns of burnout, patterns of saying yes just to avoid guilt or discomfort. You don't owe the world unlimited access to you. The Stoics didn't talk about boundaries in the modern psychological sense, but they lived with a deep sense of inner authority. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone does wrong, the harm is to themselves. Stay true to your own mind." And that's exactly what boundaries help you do. Stay true to yourself in a world constantly pulling you away from your center. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're clear. It doesn't mean you love less. It means you love cleaner, with fewer expectations, with more honesty, with space, for both people to show up as their full selves, not just their most convenient versions. But the hardest part? Not setting the boundary. It's holding it without apology, without over-explaining, without softening your truth just to make someone else feel better. When you say, "I'm not available tonight," and then follow it with a 5-sentence excuse, you dilute your truth. You send a signal that your needs need justification, but they don't. Not to the right people. Not to the version of you who's finally learning to stop abandoning herself for approval. So how do you begin? You start by identifying where your energy feels most depleted. What patterns leave you feeling small, resentful, or overextended? What requests make you say yes with your mouth and no in your chest? Then you speak simply, calmly, directly, not with defense, but with groundedness. And if your voice shakes, let it. That's not weakness. That's your nervous system learning to reclaim its power. You'll be tested. Some people will push back, not because your boundary is wrong, but because they benefited from you not having one. Hold the line anyway. Let discomfort teach you that you don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You stop shrinking. You stop over-explaining. You start walking with the quiet confidence of someone who knows, my needs are not optional. So ask yourself, where have I been bending to keep others comfortable? What boundary have I delayed setting, not because it's wrong, but because I'm afraid of being seen as too much? You are not too much. You are enough. And your space, your time, your energy are sacred. Honor them. Self-love doesn't just whisper kindness. Sometimes it speaks with a firm and necessary number. 5. Protect your space and energy. Have you ever walked into a room and felt instantly anxious, not because of what was said, but because of how it felt? That's not a coincidence. Your body is always scanning your environment. Every sound, every tone, every object, every person, it all speaks to your nervous system. Your space is not neutral. It's a mirror of your inner world, and at the same time, a shaper of it. And that's why protecting your space and energy is not just about aesthetics. It's about survival, about clarity, about self-respect. Most people never pause to ask, how does this environment affect me? They live in rooms full of noise, clutter, and emotional residue. They spend time with people who drain their spirit. They scroll through digital chaos the moment they open their eyes. And then they wonder why they feel tired, anxious, or numb. But your space, physical, mental, and emotional, is constantly shaping your state. You cannot cultivate peace while standing in the middle of chaos. The Stoics deeply understood the importance of inner stillness, but they also acknowledged that the outer world influences the inner life. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." He was speaking not only of physical busyness, but of scattered energy, of being stretched in too many directions, surrounded by too many inputs with no quiet place to return to. And without a place, externally or internally, where you feel grounded, you lose yourself in fragments. So how do you protect your space? Start with the obvious: your physical surroundings, your home, your room, the places you retreat to when the world is too much. Look around. Is it filled with things that nourish you, or things that clutter your senses? Is your environment intentional or accidental? You don't need luxury, you need presence, a clean space, soft lighting, air, stillness, beauty, even in small ways. When your space is respected, your mind feels respected. And self-respect is the foundation of self-love. But it goes deeper. Protecting your energy also means protecting who has access to it. Who do you let into your world? Who leaves you feeling depleted, scattered, smaller than you were before? Who disrupts your peace not just with what they say, but with what they carry? You don't owe everyone access. You don't need to be emotionally available at all times. That's not kindness. That's erosion. It also means protecting your mental space. Be honest. How much of your energy is being consumed by things that don't feed you? Endless scrolling, constant comparison, mindless consumption. You can't feel calm when your brain is being flooded with noise every hour of the day. What you see, hear, and allow into your consciousness matters. It builds the tone of your entire life. So begin to edit, ruthlessly and lovingly, not from judgment, but from alignment. Clear the clutter, digitally and emotionally. Clean one corner of your room. Unfollow accounts that shrink your energy. Limit conversations that spiral into negativity. Let silence fill the spaces where chaos used to live. And no, this doesn't mean shutting the world out. It means learning to come back to yourself, to build an environment, inside and out, that reminds you, I am allowed to feel safe. I am allowed to feel whole. I am allowed to guard my peace. This is not indulgence, it is responsibility. Because when your space is sacred, your energy becomes intentional. You stop leaking your power into things that don't matter. You stop absorbing the emotions of every room you enter. You start choosing, consciously, what gets to be near you. So ask yourself, what in my space is feeding me, and what is draining me? Where have I allowed too much noise, too many demands, too little intention? And what might happen if I created an environment that felt like an act of love? Because self-love isn't just a feeling, it's the space you give yourself to feel like yourself again. 6. Live with intention, not on autopilot. How many days have passed where you can't quite remember what you did, only that you were busy? You wake up, reach for your phone, scroll through messages, check the time, run through obligations, answer everyone before yourself, and before you know it, the day is over. But did you live it, or just survive it? This is the trap of autopilot, a life where things get done, but you don't feel present in any of them, where your routines are on repeat, but your soul is on mute. And while it might look productive from the outside, inside, something begins to fade. Your awareness, your connection, your joy. Self-love doesn't thrive in that kind of environment. It needs choice. It needs pause. It needs intention. The Stoics were obsessed with living intentionally, not because they feared death, but because they respected life. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the quiet of his own mind, said, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" That wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, about not wasting the one life you've been given on things that don't align with your core. When you live on autopilot, you slowly forget what truly matters. You follow habits that were never consciously chosen. You stay in routines that no longer reflect who you're becoming. You react instead of respond. And the danger is, you can go years like this, efficient, functional, and deeply disconnected. Living with intention doesn't mean changing everything overnight. It means bringing awareness to the small things. The first breath of your day, the reason behind your yes or your no, the way you eat, speak, walk, rest. It means asking yourself, not just once, but often, is this how I want to live? And the beauty is, intention transforms the ordinary. A glass of water becomes nourishment. A 5-minute walk becomes clarity. Saying no becomes an act of freedom. Even doing nothing becomes sacred, because it was chosen, not defaulted into. So how do you shift from autopilot to intention? You slow down, you simplify, you create space between stimulus and response. You choose your inputs. You pause before you say yes. You set one small intention each morning, not a to-do list, but a to-be list. Today, I want to speak with kindness. Today, I want to listen fully. Today, I want to feel grounded, not rushed. That's where your life begins to change. Not in dramatic overhauls, but in subtle moments of awareness that accumulate into meaning. And with intention, something sacred happens. Your energy comes back. You're no longer scattering yourself across 100 distractions. You're living aligned with your values, not someone else's demands. And that alignment feels like peace. So ask yourself, what parts of my day am I living unconsciously? What choices have I stopped choosing and just started repeating? And what would my life feel like if I returned to it with presence? Because the greatest act of self-love isn't found in escape. It's found in showing up fully, freely, and consciously for your own life. 7. Show up for yourself daily. How often do you keep promises to everyone except yourself? You wake up for others. You show up for the job. You reply to every message, meet every deadline, say yes even when you're tired, all while pushing your own needs to the end of the line. You're dependable, responsible, available for everyone but yourself. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to disappear. This is one of the quietest forms of self-abandonment, the daily erosion of self-respect through neglect. Not because you don't care about yourself, but because you've been trained to believe that everyone else comes first, that your value lies in your usefulness, that rest, care, stillness, presence are luxuries you have to earn. But here's the truth. Showing up for yourself is not a reward. It's a requirement. You can't build confidence on broken self-promises. You can't build inner trust if you keep pushing your own needs to the bottom of the list. Self-love is built in the small, consistent moments, the 5 minutes you give yourself to breathe, the water you drink when you're overwhelmed, the meal you eat slowly, without guilt, the boundary you hold, even when it's uncomfortable. The Stoics believed in duty, not only to others, but to the self. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." That adorning isn't superficial, it's internal. It's about living each day as someone who is worth showing up for, not because you're flawless, but because you are yours. And showing up for yourself doesn't mean doing everything. It means doing something, with consistency, with care, with intention. Maybe it's a morning routine, a journal entry, a workout, a walk in silence, saying no to a request that would deplete you, speaking kindly to yourself after a mistake. They may seem small, but they're powerful, because every time you follow through, you send yourself a message. I matter. I don't just perform love, I receive it too. But what stops most people is perfectionism, the belief that if they can't commit fully, they shouldn't commit at all. But perfection is the enemy of self-love. You don't need a perfect routine. You need presence. You don't need to feel ready. You need to start messy, honest, tired, but willing. Because real change doesn't happen through intensity. It happens through consistency, through the quiet choice, made again and again, to care for yourself even when no one's watching. So ask yourself, what's one small way I can show up for myself today? Not to fix myself, but to remind myself that I'm worth effort, attention, and kindness. And tomorrow, do it again. Because your relationship with yourself isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the ordinary moments when you finally choose to stop abandoning yourself. 8. Speak kindly to yourself. If someone spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would you call that love? For most people, the answer is no, not even close, because while you might speak gently to a friend, offer encouragement to a stranger, or show compassion to someone struggling, when it comes to yourself, the voice often shifts. It becomes sharp, cold, demanding, cruel. You mess up slightly, and your mind whispers, "You're so stupid." You feel low, and it says, "What's wrong with you?" You fail, and the voice screams, "You never get it right. Why do you even try?" This voice lives inside your head, and yet it rarely sounds like your own. It's a collection of old criticisms, inherited beliefs, internalized guilt, echoes from childhood, leftover wounds from rejection, cultural conditioning that says you must be more before you're worthy of rest, of grace, of softness. But here's the thing. Your inner voice becomes your emotional home. You live inside what you repeat to yourself, and if the tone is always hostile, perfectionistic, judgmental, you begin to shrink. You stop trying. You stop believing you deserve better. You may smile on the outside, but deep down, you've become your own worst enemy. And self-love cannot grow in a place where your voice is the weapon. The Stoics, often misunderstood as cold or detached, actually spoke deeply about the way our thoughts shape our experience. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, what you repeat internally becomes who you are externally. You can't treat yourself with cruelty and expect to radiate calm. You can't belittle yourself and expect to build confidence. The mind and spirit are not separate. They are in constant conversation. So what does it look like to speak kindly to yourself? It doesn't mean ignoring your flaws or pretending everything's okay. It means changing the tone, from blame to curiosity, from harshness to honesty. It means replacing "I always ruin everything" with "That was hard, but I'm learning." It means catching yourself in the spiral of shame and saying instead, "I made a mistake. That doesn't make me less worthy." It means offering the same grace to yourself that you'd offer a loved one. And kindness doesn't always sound poetic. Sometimes it's a simple breath, a whispered, "I'm here. I've got you." A pause before judgment, a willingness to hold yourself through failure instead of abandoning yourself at the first sign of imperfection. But speaking kindly to yourself takes practice, especially if you've lived for years in inner hostility. At first, it feels fake, it feels weak, but that's only because you're unlearning a language of survival, a voice shaped by fear, not by truth. And the only way to shift it is to keep choosing differently. Start small. Notice one thought today that is unnecessarily cruel and soften it. Rephrase it. not with denial, but with compassion. Keep a journal where you write to yourself like you would to someone you love. Post reminders. Breathe before you speak, even to yourself. The more you practice, the more that voice becomes familiar. And one day, you'll notice it's no longer hostile. It's supportive, strong, loving, yours. So ask yourself, what have I been repeating to myself that's keeping me small? What would it sound like if my inner voice actually supported my growth instead of punishing my past? You've survived so much already. The least you deserve is a voice inside you that reminds you of your worth, especially when the world forgets. Speak with kindness, because no one hears you more than you. 9. Stop comparing your journey. When did your life start feeling like a race? It probably wasn't one moment. It was a slow shift. The moment you saw someone else succeed, and instead of feeling inspired, you felt behind. The day you scrolled through someone's perfect photos and thought, why am I not there yet? The time a friend celebrated a win, and a part of you sank, not because you weren't happy for them, but because it reminded you of where you weren't. This is how comparison steals from you. Not all at once, but piece by piece. It starts with a glance, becomes a thought, grows into a judgment, and before long, you're no longer present in your own life. You're stuck watching someone else's highlight reel while slowly forgetting the value of your own quiet progress. Comparison is the enemy of clarity. The more you watch others, the less you hear your own voice. The more you measure your worth through someone else's timeline, the more disconnected you become from your own truth. You start chasing goals that were never yours. You start rushing progress that needs time. You live in urgency instead of alignment, and it leaves you tired, but not fulfilled. The Stoics knew this trap well. They warned us not to anchor our sense of peace to what others are doing. Epictetus wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the path of integrity often looks different from the path of popularity. And if you're too busy performing for others, you'll forget how to live for yourself. Your journey is not supposed to look like theirs. It's not meant to follow their path, their timeline, their version of happiness. You came here with your own rhythm, your own lessons, your own calling, and every time you compare, you interrupt the unfolding of that story. And let's be honest, most of the time, you're not even comparing reality. You're comparing your struggles to someone else's polished version. You see the end result, not the sleepless nights. You see the confidence, not the inner war they fought to find it. Comparison is rarely fair, and it's never complete. So how do you step out of it? You start by noticing when it happens, not with judgment, but with awareness. I'm comparing again. I'm losing touch with myself. Then you pause. You return to your breath, to your body, to your present moment. You ask, what do I actually want? What matters to me? What have I already overcome that no one else can see? You replace comparison with appreciation, not just for others, but for yourself. You write down your progress. You celebrate your own small wins. You remind yourself daily, I'm not behind, I'm becoming, and I don't need to look sideways to know I'm growing. Because self-love thrives in individuality, it dies in imitation, and your path, even if it's slower, quieter, or less understood, is not wrong. It's yours, sacred, unfolding exactly as it should. So ask yourself, where have I been shrinking my light because someone else's looked brighter? And what might I discover if I stopped comparing and started trusting my own direction again? You are not late. You are not missing out. You are only being called to walk your path, fully, gently, and with your own pace. 10. Allow yourself to receive. Why is it so much easier to give than to receive? You're quick to help. You show up for others, carry their burdens, hold their pain. You offer encouragement, time, attention, often without being asked. And yet, when someone offers you the same, you hesitate. You deflect. You say, "I'm fine." You downplay your needs. You laugh off compliments. You pretend you don't need support, even when you do. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of self-love, the ability to receive. To receive help without guilt. To receive kindness without suspicion. To receive love without feeling like you have to deserve it first. Many of us were raised to believe that receiving is indulgent, that it's selfish, that strength means doing it all alone. But that kind of strength, it's a survival strategy, not a way to thrive. Because if you only allow yourself to give, but not receive, you eventually run empty. You become the well that never drinks, the light that never rests, the strong one who quietly breaks. The Stoics taught discipline, but they also taught balance. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You are not meant to live in fear or in anger, but in harmony with others." And true harmony cannot exist if you're only ever the giver. Relationships, with others and with life itself, require exchange. They require you to open, not just offer, to accept, not just extend. So why is receiving so difficult? Because it requires vulnerability. It asks you to be seen, to admit that you are not invincible, to accept that you have needs. And for someone who has learned to survive by being strong, receiving feels like weakness. But it's not. Receiving is one of the purest forms of trust. Trust in others, trust in life. Trust that you are worthy, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And that includes the small things. A compliment, simply say, "Thank you." Don't brush it off. Let it land. Let it nourish. A gift, accept it with grace. Let yourself be delighted. Support, when offered, take it. Don't assume it's a burden. Don't try to earn it by giving more in return. Because when you refuse to receive, you block the flow of love, not just from others, but from life itself. And eventually, you begin to believe that your only value is in what you offer, never in what you are. But you are not just a giver. You are a being worthy of care, support, affection, kindness, just like anyone else. And learning to receive is how you begin to let that truth settle into your bones. So how do you practice it? Start small. The next time someone offers something kind, a compliment, a moment, a gesture, pause, breathe, let it in. Don't push it away with sarcasm or modesty. Receive it like you'd want someone you love to receive from you. Then go deeper. Notice where you feel undeserving. Whose voice taught you that you had to earn everything? Whose love made you believe that care always came with a cost? And then release it. That was their wound, not your truth. So ask yourself, what am I rejecting that I actually need? What have I convinced myself I must survive without, even though it's being offered to me? You don't have to carry everything alone. You don't have to earn love to receive it. Let it reach you. Let it soften you. Because allowing yourself to receive is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. 11. Celebrate your progress, not just the result. When was the last time you paused to say, "I'm proud of myself"? Not because you achieved something massive, but because you simply kept going. In a culture obsessed with outcomes, results, and end goals, progress often becomes invisible. We're taught to celebrate the finish line, the promotion, the degree, the transformation. but not the steps it took to get there. And so, when we're in the messy middle, we feel like we're failing, even when we're evolving. But self-love isn't found only in the big wins. It's found in the quiet consistency, in the mornings you got out of bed when everything felt heavy, in the days you spoke kindly to yourself, even when it would have been easier to criticize. In the decision to keep showing up, not because it was easy, but because you knew you were worth it. The Stoics rarely praised public achievement. They valued internal mastery. Seneca once wrote, "Success comes to the person who does each thing in its proper time and with earnest effort. What is left undone, let it be undone with peace." In other words, your effort is sacred, and it deserves recognition even when the result is unfinished, even when it's imperfect, even when no one else sees it. Because real growth doesn't happen in leaps. It happens in the small decisions no one applauds. It's in choosing patience instead of anger. It's in returning to your journal after months of silence. It's in drinking water instead of numbing. It's in saying, "I forgive you," to yourself, again and again. And the danger of only celebrating results is this. It teaches your nervous system that you're only worthy of kindness when you win, that love is conditional, that rest must be earned, that progress that isn't public isn't real. But you're growing in ways the world can't measure. You're becoming stronger, clearer, softer, even if no one notices. And you deserve to notice. So how do you start? Start by reframing your definition of success. Instead of asking, "Did I finish?" ask, "Did I show up?" Instead of waiting until the goal is met, celebrate the steps, celebrate the habits, celebrate the shifts in thinking, the emotional boundaries, the moments of self-restraint. Write them down, speak them out loud. Let your system feel what it means to be celebrated, not for doing, but for becoming. And if you're someone who struggles to feel enough, this practice is especially powerful because it reprograms the part of you that was raised on pressure. That learned love had to be earned. That thought perfection was the only safe way to be seen. You are not a project. You are a person. You don't have to wait until everything is fixed to be proud of how far you've come. So ask yourself, where am I waiting to feel worthy when I'm already in the process of becoming? What would change if I started celebrating myself? Not later, but now. The result is important, but it's not the only thing. Your progress is sacred. Your path is enough, and every step you've taken, even the unseen ones, they matter. 12. Treat yourself like someone you love. If someone you cared about deeply were hurting, how would you treat them? You'd listen without judgment. You'd be patient with their process. You'd remind them that they're more than their worst moment. You'd speak gently. You'd forgive quickly. You'd sit beside them in silence if that's all they needed. You wouldn't ask them to be perfect to be worthy. You wouldn't withhold warmth until they proved themselves. You would simply love them as they are. Now ask yourself, why don't you do that for you? For most people, love is easier to give than to receive, especially when it comes to the self. You push, demand, criticize. You hold yourself to impossible standards. You withhold rest, softness, celebration, thinking you must first earn it. You love yourself conditionally. I'll be kind to myself once I lose the weight. I'll rest when I've done enough. I'll be proud when I finally get it right. But here's the hard truth. If you only treat yourself with care once you're perfect, you'll never feel worthy of love, because perfection never arrives. There's always one more thing to fix, one more flaw to correct, one more goal to reach, and so the love stays delayed, distant, cold. The Stoics didn't speak of self-love the way we do now, but they insisted on self-respect. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And what is self-respect, if not treating yourself like someone who matters, someone who deserves dignity, care, and grace, not later, but now? Treating yourself like someone you love doesn't mean indulging every impulse. It means tending to your deeper needs. It means showing up with discipline and softness, like a parent would for a child, like a healer would for a wound, like a friend would for someone who forgot they were worthy. And no, it's not always easy, especially if you've lived for years in self-criticism, if you learned that love was something to earn, if you grew up in an environment where softness was rare and care was inconsistent. But the good news? You can relearn, you can practice, you can create a new standard, not just for how others treat you, but for how you treat you. Start with the small things. Feed yourself like someone you care about. Speak to yourself kindly in moments of failure. Give yourself the gift of rest, even when the to-do list isn't finished. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, "I may not be perfect, but I am still worthy of kindness." Because if you wait until everything is fixed to love yourself, you'll spend your whole life waiting. But if you choose to love yourself in the midst of the mess, something shifts. You begin to heal. Not because everything is better, but because you finally decided, "I'm worth showing up for." So ask yourself, if I truly treated myself like someone I loved, what would I do differently today? What would I stop tolerating? What would I begin to give? Because self-love is not a feeling, it's a way of being, and it begins not someday, not when you're perfect, but now, just as you are. So often we search for love in faraway places, in other people, in achievements, in fleeting moments of praise. But the love we're really craving is the one we've been withholding from ourselves. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly. In the morning you choose rest over rushing. In the moment you forgive a past version of you without needing an apology. In the way you pour water for yourself like someone you care about. In the boundary you hold without guilt. In the breath you take before reacting. In the way you finally say, "I deserve this softness too." That's what real self-love looks like. Not a destination, but a practice, a return, a remembering. You've just heard 12 gentle ways to come back home to yourself. Not someday, not when you're healed, but today, exactly as you are. You don't need to be more to deserve love. You just need to be present enough to receive it. So take one of these reminders with you, just one. Practice it today, then again tomorrow. Let it grow roots in your life. Because the truth is simple. The more you treat yourself with love, the less you chase it where it was never meant to be found. If this episode moved something in you, even just one line, share it. Pass the softness forward. Subscribe to keep this journey going with us. You are not hard to love. You just forgot that the first place love belongs is within you.